Today I'm going to show you how to make the Mardu Surge precon go absolutely nuclear. With this upgrade, the game plan of this deck is to create a bunch of creature tokens, mainly through attack triggers, and sacrifice them in combat to draw cards or to drain everyone to death using Zurgo. This is a combat-focused aristocrat strategy. Every turn we want to attack with Zurgo and or with our other token makers that create tokens during combat. Then either have those tokens die during combat through enemy blocks or with our sack outlets to draw cards. Or if they don't block, we get to chip at our opponent's life and then drain everyone if the tokens leave at the end of the turn, or with a sack outlet, or with the new Mardu mechanic, Mobilize. Once life totals are low and we've assembled enough token makers to swarm the board with creature tokens, cards like Bastion of Remembrance within range and Zurgo's Drain ability will secure the win. This deck has a pretty focused strategy out of the box, so the goal was just to improve the quality of some of our cards and address some of the weaknesses by removing some of the one-time use token maker spells for higher utility and repeatable token makers, adding more removal to answer some problems we might face as a squishy combat-focused deck, plus the amount of removal we have is just a little low in general, and add more recursion and protection to improve the resiliency of this deck, just to ensure we can get those attack triggers in without the risk of losing our token makers in combat. The goal is to do all of this while doing it for less than $50. In each precon, there are 10 brand new cards to Magic. Let's take a look at the cards in Mardu Surge, looking at the face commander Zurgo Stormrender. Mardu is now good at drawing cards. Zurgo Stormrender is an aggressive commander who wants you to play tokens. Luckily, this deck is very good at that. The catch is that he wants those tokens to die to either draw you cards or ping opponents down. What stands out to me about Zurgo is how flexible his two abilities are. Sacrifice an attacking token if you need the card draw, or keep them alive until your end step and kill everyone with a board wipe. This deck doesn't struggle to do damage, but it's also very efficient at keeping the engine going. The backup commander of this deck is Nariv Crackling Vanguard, who also cares about tokens but wants you to have a wide variety of troops. While the card advantage has some strings attached, swinging with a 4/4 Death Touch flyer makes for a relatively simple condition to reach, and you get to play a dragon as your commander. A new dragon to this set, Goldless Triad, has every commander player's favorite mechanic, Myriad. Not only are each of your opponents getting 4/3 flyers coming their way, they also have to deal with the Zurgo triggers on top of that. Absolutely lethal. Now, who doesn't love Myriad? And Lieutenant. Iron Wolf Forger can throw Myriad on any non-legendary creature that would make for a good target. There's a lot of possibilities with this one, and I think this is an awesome new card. Once you have enough Myriad on your board, you can then stack value on all of those Myriad triggers with within range. Notably, this blasts each opponent. Yeah, Redoubled Stormsinger fits perfectly alongside Zurgo and functions as a token doubler in a deck that wants lots of tokens. And then it also sacrifices those tokens in a deck that wants tokens to die. Have fun dealing with this one. The second rare dragon in this deck, Bone Devourer, is designed to flash in after your tokens die. That 2/2 very quickly becomes a 6/6 or greater, but be careful it doesn't get too big. Bone Devourer's last ability is great for the card draw, but it can also kill you. Inox Strike Leader has a weird Lieutenant Myriad-esque ability that can also serve as a way to protect your board from a board wipe. But forget all of that, this is a dog riding what looks like a werecat. Sign me up and I will take 1,000. Finally, a new card in this commander deck with Mobilize built into it. Infantry Shield can slap the Mardu set mechanic on your biggest creature to constantly churn out ephemeral tokens and keep the pressure on the board. And the last new card in this deck, Will of the Mardu, is an instant that can double the size of your board if you want to target yourself, rebuild your board if there was an asymmetrical board wipe, or remove a big threat using the power of friendship. So now that we've looked at the 10 newest cards from the set, let's take a look at the 10 cards I added to streamline Mardu Surge. The first card on this list is Kaiser Legion's Emperor. He does everything we want to do. Sacks a creature during combat to draw a card with Zurgo, draws cards himself, creates attacking creature tokens, and pings someone for damage. I love when decks can swap cards out of the 99 to be the commander, and Kaiser is the perfect fit in this deck if you want to do so. Anna Pakal is probably my favorite commander from the most recent Ixalan set. She's a great creature token maker and ramps up her production output over the course of the game. Hammers of Moradin are another creature token maker using Myriad. We get to tap 3 of our opponent's creatures, which can help our token makers attack safely. Warren Soul Trader is basically a free sack outlet. We can sack a creature during combat to create a treasure token and draw a card with Zurgo, or sack a creature token outside of combat to drain everyone. I prefer this card over other sack outlets like Phyrexian Altar because if we sack a creature during combat, the mana doesn't go away after combat since it creates treasures. We can then use the mana post-combat or whenever we need it. Also, the treasures synergize with Nariv, which is kind of a nice bonus. As the game progresses, we probably won't have favorable attacks, so Recon is a great way to get all of our attack triggers in safely without risk of our token makers dying in combat. If our token makers would die when blocked, activate Recon to remove them from combat. Otherwise, if they aren't blocked, let damage go through in the damage step, then activate Recon at the end of the damage step to remove them from combat and untap, which is basically a pseudo vigilance. Pretty sweet. Adding in another combat protection piece to double our odds of drawing at least once. Loyal Unicorn and cards like it are important to have to ensure token makers don't die in combat when they attack. As you can tell, the theme of these upgrades tend to be around protecting those token makers. I wanted to include another pinger to accelerate our win con. Agate Instigator is one of the strongest. It can ping everyone for 2 whenever a creature enters using Offspring, or if we want, we can just cast it alone for 2 mana and it'll ping everyone for 1 whenever a creature enters, which is basically the equivalent to Impact Tremors. We can also sack the Offspring with sack outlets to trigger Zurgo if it's needed, but we'd prefer to keep it on the board. In these upgrades, I've been keeping cards printed in the main set in a separate section just because those are a little bit obvious, but Ruinous Ultimatum being printed on the guest sheet is exactly that. It's a reprint. Our interaction suite is kinda low, so adding this one provides an amazing one-sided board wipe, which lets all of our creatures attack freely. It's also great to have if we end up being behind on the board. It's hard to play a white deck without including Lauren of the Third Path. Pillow Fort cards can really halt our game plan since we're playing a combat-focused deck. We need more ways to interact with enchantments besides just Stroke of Midnight. But I didn't want to just add something like Generous Gift and call it a day. I wanted another removal piece that filled multiple roles. Lauren removes an artifact or enchantment, and she's also a card draw engine. Taking it one step further, she also has synergy with the recursion in this deck. Speaking of recursion, there's only one in this deck with Sun Titan. So let's add another one to double our chances and make it a dragon. Our game plan wants to commit several attackers to the board, and it helps to rebuild if we get wiped or when we inevitably lose our creatures to removal or combat. So now that we've added 10 cards, it's time to do the difficult part. Cut 10. I was just looking at adding this card to an Angel deck, actually. Angel of Invention is a one-time token maker with an Anthem attached, but we prefer repeatable token generation, and the Anthem effect doesn't really synergize with our game plan of sacking those tokens for value. The buff can sometimes help our token makers attack through safely, but against any stompier decks, the buff just really doesn't do anything. Erin Benalia's Ruin is a sack outlet, which is nice, but it costs 2 mana to activate and can only be activated once per turn. The effect of putting +1/+1 counters on our creatures doesn't synergize with our game plan. We just went over that with Angel of Invention. Our tokens won't be sticking around very often. It can buff our token makers to attack through, but like Angel of Invention, the buff won't help us that much and the mana investment is too high. This card is great in my $100 Goblin deck, but it's a one-time token maker and not very good in this one. When it enters the battlefield, it'll make you a few goblins, but then it becomes a vanilla 2/2. Not amazing. We definitely can add better token makers. And I'm cutting Commander's Insignia for a similar reason to Angel of Invention. It doesn't do enough to help our game plan. We're keeping a couple more explosive Anthem-like effects with Gold Knight Commander and Ogre Battle Driver, but the goal is to keep Zurgo on the board with various types of protection, so this is kind of redundant. With Grenzo Havoc Raiser, there just isn't a whole lot of opportunity to get the combat damage trigger. The goat is nice, as is the stealing card draw, but he just doesn't really contribute to the game plan in basically any way. This card would maybe be worth keeping if it was an instant, but Lingering Souls is a sorcery token maker. Sure, we can get 4 tokens from it, but 5 mana for 4 tokens is alright. Again, it's basically a one-time use token maker and we're trying to cut those. This card can make us prone to running out of steam if we don't have another token maker in hand. And while Mirror Battlesphere may be fun and funny, it's way too expensive mana-wise to get 4 tokens worth. And those tokens need to stick around to get value from mirror attacking. Otherwise, if we sack the tokens to trigger Zurgo, Mirror Battlesphere just becomes a big vanilla body. I'm cutting Release the Dogs and Shadow Summoning for the same reason that I cut Lingering Souls. If these were instants and the tokens had haste and some kind of evasion like Menace or Death Touch, I could definitely see a reason to keep them, but right now with all 3 of them being sorcery speed and the tokens not being all that valuable, it's just not worth it. As a ramp option, Solemn Simulacrum is just not great. When it dies, we only draw 1 card, it's only a 2/2 body, and we don't get any value from Zurgo when it does die. So as iconic as this card is, it's not very good in this deck. Now that we've done the hard job of cutting 10 cards, I wanted to talk through 5 of my favorite cards included in the 99. Adeline Resplendent Cathar is very similar to Inox Strike Leader as she makes a 1/1 token attacking each opponent whenever you attack, but it doesn't have to be her that's attacking. It feels like this card used to be like $20 not too long ago, but it's an excellent inclusion in this deck. You just have to appreciate the uncommons that can put in work. Bastion of Remembrance is fantastic in a deck that has no problem making tokens, and this deck has no problem making tokens. The added life gain is almost the best part of this card, as you can very quickly become the arch enemy at the table, and this just extends your lifetime. This card isn't that insane or even close to being overpowered, it's just a penny rare, but it does have a very cool role in this deck. Eliminate the Competition serves as a sacrifice outlet, triggering Zurgo's ladder ability to destroy target creatures. You can put a laser designator on the other 3 commanders at the table, and whatever else you feel like sacrificing tokens to kill. Ophiomancer is one of my favorite cards in Commander. She triggers on each upkeep, so if it checks for a snake and doesn't find divine one, you get a new pet. The trick here is to just sacrifice your snakes on each end step so you can rinse and repeat 4 times in a turn cycle while constantly ensuring that you have a death touch blocker up. This card also goes absolutely ballistic with divine visitation. Speaking of penny rares, this is one of those decks where Thalise just fits in perfectly. She's a great token generator and gives you some nice evasion on those spirits to help guarantee your attackers are getting through. I mentioned earlier I like to break out the cards from the main set you could add to this deck, so let's take a look at 5 Tarkir Dragonstorm cards you should add to your shopping cart. You know what a great way to guarantee your 1/1s will get through is? You give him Death Touch. Bonecare Butcher is an excellent card to slam turn 4 immediately after Zurgo. And it should be of no surprise to you, a Mythic Mardu enchantment is good in this deck. It gives all creatures you control +1/+1 and Death Touch, as well as... Wait, what? This also gives an additional combat? Mardu is so strong. What the Voice of Victory is a pseudo Grand Abolisher. It not only makes 2 tokens whenever it attacks, it also ensures that when you're ready to hit the kill switch, it'll work. These dual color sieges are really some of my favorite cards in the set. Windcrag Siege is either Ishin on an enchantment, or will make a lifeline hasty goblin on your upkeep. The Mardu option is probably the only one you're ever picking in this deck, or really any deck for that matter. And a sacrifice outlet that draws you cards is certainly no slouch either. Hardened Tactician is metal as hell and allows you to essentially double up on Zurgo triggers. So what do you think? Does an aggro Mardu token deck sound fun to you? It's certainly up there as one of my favorite precons to date, although if I were buying something to be designated as the arch enemy, I'd take a hard look at Valgavoth. Sorry that it took me so long to make this video and that it maybe was a little bit difficult to understand me throughout it. I got sick last week and have been like super congested, so I haven't been able to record. And then I just needed to get this video done, and so I recorded it anyway today as I started to feel just a little bit better. Check out my Sultai Arisen and Jeskai Striker videos if you're still undecided on which Tarkir Precon you should buy. There's some great insight in those videos about how the decks play. Until next time, peace.